Before we get into anything, I need you to hear this clearly. Every single month you wait to start investing, you're letting someone else collect the exact cash flow that could have been yours. And if your goal is to hit $5,000 a month in real estate income, then I want you to imagine something for a simple second. If you had already started 2 or 3 years ago, that $5,000 per month could have already been coming into your bank account right now. It could have been paying your rent, could have been covering your car, or just stacking in an investment account. Instead, someone else is earning it, and only because you haven't taken the first step yet. And the reason that hits so hard is because $5,000 per month in income isn't unrealistic. It's not some fantasy number, and it doesn't take years and years to get to. It's actually straightforward once you understand the plan. So if you're tired of feeling behind, if you're tired of watching other people do the thing that you know you should be doing, stick with me. I'm going to walk you through exactly what it takes to build a $5,000 per month in real estate income in a way that feels simple, safe, and achievable. So let's get started and break this down. All right, so getting to $5,000 per month in real estate income. So the first question you have to ask yourself is, what does it actually look like? What does $5,000 of income in real estate look like when it comes in, right? So there's two kind of paths that you could take, especially early on. You're not going to be jumping into the big deals. So we need to kind of separate it into something that's a little bit more understandable. The first path is regular rentals. This is going to be your multifamily buildings, your duplexes, your triplexes. Maybe you have one commercial unit on the bottom floor and maybe 2 units above, kind of that very small building type of investing. It's going to be less risk, but you're going to be getting a little bit less profit. And the reason for that is because it's more consistent, right? You're going to be having leases that are going to be year long compared to an Airbnb style investing where it's going to be a little bit more risk and you will get more profits, but it's going to require a little bit more work too. So the difference is that it might be harder to start Airbnb depending on your location, because you really want to be in a solid area if you're going to be doing Airbnb, right? You need to be by the water or something. You need to be in a very desirable area. So if you're not in a desirable area where people are traveling to, the Airbnb might be a little bit more difficult if you want to make even more money in real estate. So it's always recommended to just kind of start out with regular rentals. They're a lot more consistent. They're a lot more flowing, less maintenance, less management. So definitely a good path to start on. So there is no one magic formula or strategy in real estate. It's simply owning the right assets that produce predictable income. And the way that I want you to think about this is think of it as building blocks, right? So imagine it as Lego pieces that you're building together to build a Lego home. You need to start with one block at a time, right? You can't just jump straight to the big stuff. You can't immediately put on the roof of the home if you haven't built to the foundation or the sidewalls yet. And you have to start small, piece by piece. So your first property is going to be this first Lego piece here, right? So for example, let's say you're making an extra $500 per month in income and cash flow from this example property, right? Your first property. This is going to be kind of your guinea pig, right? You're going to first understand and learn the whole process through this property. You're going through financing for maybe the first time. You're going through realtors for the first time. You're having all these discussions brand new to you that you've never done before. There's new terms that are coming at you every single day because you don't know what you're doing. It's your first time. So this is going to be your guinea pig. You're learning, right? So this is not going to be your most profitable property, but it's going to be your foot in the door, and it's going to be very important because as you get later on into the newer deals, you're going to want to know what you're doing. So $500 per month, let's just say, is your first income property. You're holding it for maybe 2-3 years. You start getting enough money on your principal pay down and also your cash flow. You decide to look into something new. Your next property, let's say you kind of upgraded a little bit, $600 per month, right? Woo, now you got something similar, same size, but now you're scaling, right? Now you just doubled, more than doubled your rental income because you're reinvesting. You're doing a 1031 exchange, you're pulling out your equity from the first deal, putting it into the second deal, you saved up extra cash from your 9-to-5 job, and you have extra cash flow that's coming in each month, and you're throwing it into this deal too. So you're continuously building the blocks, right? And it's gonna get to a point where maybe you reach your third or fourth deal of about the same size units or maybe the type of building. Now you have a structure, right? Now you have a plan, you know your strategy, you understand the markets better, you understand what you're looking for in the deals, financially and physically in the property. So now it gets to a point where you understand what you're comfortable with. This is where you can start to expand into the bigger stuff. So like I said before, now you can start looking at the bigger pieces, right? So if you're building a Lego house, now you have the foundation set, you have the walls set. let's start putting the roof on it, right? So now you're putting on bigger pieces, more impactful pieces, and things that are gonna cost more money too. So this is gonna be maybe your bigger properties. This might be commercial units with 6 or 7 stores, maybe a 10-unit building, something along the lines of that. These are gonna produce you a lot more. These might produce you like, let's say 5,000 per month, right? In one single building. Now you're gonna need a lot more equity to put into a bigger building, of course, but you're ready for it, right? You've already been through the process 1, 2, 3 times, maybe even more, before you reach those bigger type of properties that are gonna produce you a lot more income. So you're ready for it. And then again, you're just kind of scaling from there, right? You know what you're doing at that point. You're gonna go to another big building, 5,000 per month. So by the time you hit maybe like 10 buildings, it might take you 10, 20 years down the line to reach those type of buildings in that many quantity. But at that time, you're gonna build a system that's almost automatic, right? We're gonna talk about a little bit later in the video about automation, but you have now a fully functioning almost company where maybe you have an employee, 2 employees, where they're helping you manage your properties with maintenance and administrative work and paperwork. So you're on a roll now essentially, and you're just building more building blocks to your portfolio, right? But the idea is that you're putting it into building blocks, so you need to start with one. You don't need to start big, don't rush real estate. Again, this is an exponential long-term game. So it will take some time before you explode your income. Break up the goals into smaller chunks and attack each one when the time is right. So you don't need to rush into it, right? If you're rushing real estate, you're gonna put yourself in a bad deal. You're gonna rush your due diligence. You didn't do enough due diligence, and now you're starting to lose money each month. And we're gonna get into an example down here, but you need to make sure that you're taking your time with it, especially if you're first one, right? This is gonna be your guinea pig property. So you need to know what you're doing on your guinea pig property and kind of learning the steps from there. Because at least if you lose money, it's easier to lose maybe $500 per month, and then you could just sell the building again and you cash out. Maybe you lost a couple $1,000s. It is what it is, but you learned a lot, right? So we're gonna try not to make that happen, obviously, but it's way better on a smaller property than trying to jump the gun to a big property where you're trying to make $5,000 per month, but now you have to lose $5,000 per month and you're gonna have to foreclose, you're gonna lose your mortgage, your credit's gonna be hit. It's not a good idea. So let's talk about getting your first cash flowing property, right? So you have to start with one property that is cash flowing positive each month. It's very important that we try to look into the financials of your first property, because you want to buy a property that not only is going to cover expenses and cover the mortgage payment, but have enough money left over where you're putting in cash flow into your pocket just by owning the building. So let's go through this example here. Our purchase price for this property is going to be $500,000. We're gonna put 20% down, 100 grand, and this building specifically, let's say, is collecting $4,500 per month in rent. That brings our yearly income to $35,000, which is a 7% cap rate, which is a strong cap rate. Just for this example, let's say our interest is at 5.75%. This will bring our mortgage payments to $28,000 per year. So we can see if we do our net operating income subtracted from our annual mortgage payments, we're getting a cash flow of $7,000 per year extra in our pocket, right? This is on top of the expenses, already past the expenses, already past the mortgage payments. This is all extra cash in our pocket. So let's go through the same exact example now, except with a little bit different income from the tenants and from the units. So all the numbers are exactly the same except this number here, right? We're collecting $1,000 less than what we were in this first example. So how does this change our numbers now? So our net operating income comes down to $24,500, which is significantly less now than $35,000. Our cap rate is still going to be positive, right? And a positive cap rate means the property is going to make money, but that's only if you are not on a mortgage. So what does this mean? If we do our calculation, $24,500 subtracted from $28,000, we are actually negative $3,500 per month, only by the income not being high enough to cover our mortgage payment. And this is why it's crucial to also calculate our cash on cash return and our cash flow. Because you might just read cap rate, 7% cap rate, 4.9% cap rate, okay, it's gonna make money, right? 5% cap rate is not bad at all. There's a lot of buildings that will do pretty well at 5% cap rate. But then we look at the financials of our mortgage and we say, wait a second, we're actually losing $3,500 every single year in cash flow. That's extra money I have to pull out of my pocket now. So now I have to invest $100,000 and then each month I have to pay even more, even though I have tenants living in the building. That doesn't make sense, right? So it's very important to make sure that we are cash flowing positive, especially on our first deal, because we want to see the process and make sure that it's working well. Your first property will give you experience in analyzing deals, screening tenants, understanding business expenses and management. And so like I said before, this is going to be your guinea pig property, right? You're going to be learning a lot from your first property, and you're going to carry all that knowledge over into your second property, and your second property is going to be even better, and it's going to continue down the line. So you're going to use this new knowledge after some time to see how much you want to scale your portfolio. The process stays exactly the same. You find your rhythm, recycle, and reuse that same process. So this kind of goes into the BRRRR method, right? We're going to talk about it a little bit down here, but the BRRRR method is essentially the kind of method or strategy you want to use to recycle your equity into a new property and continue to multiply your growth of your wealth. So you might think to yourself, how much can I realistically make in real estate investments? And that entirely depends on how much you want to invest and the financials of the deal. So like I explained in this example up here, for this person, they're putting a down payment of $100,000. And in this case, they're gonna make an extra $7,000 per year in cash flow, and on top of their mortgage pay down and also appreciation and tax benefits, they're gonna make a bunch of extra money. But say someone has less money, say they only want to put 15% down. Now, if you could get financing at 15% down, then that's going to be great, but you might pay an extremely high interest rate. Or maybe there's someone else who has even more money. Say they have 200 grand. If you have 200 grand down, then you're going to be paying less to your annual mortgage payments, which means your cash flow is going to be a little bit more too. So it entirely depends on your personal life and where you are financially. So that's a decision that you would have to make. But if you understand the financial analysis, then it takes only 2 minutes to see how much you can make. But for an estimate, a starting investment property should cash flow you a minimum of $1,000 to $1,500 per month. Now that's a very loose number. Again, that's just to throw out some numbers that you want to try to see in your first real estate deal. If you don't have that much money to invest, then maybe this number will be significantly lower, right? Maybe you're looking at $500-$600 per month, not $1,500 per month. But it all relates back to the percentages and your analytics, right? So if you want to go see my other video on how to properly do financial analytics on a real estate deal to see exactly how much you are making, then you can go check out that video. But it's super crucial that you understand how much you're going to be making in these deals. And that's just kind of an estimated range that you want to try to shoot for. So let's talk about how to scale now, right? You went to your first property and you started to learn the process. You learned the process. Now you're making a little bit of money. How can I scale from $0 to $5,000 per month? Because one single property is not going to cash flow $5,000, especially if it's your first property. So what kind of strategy can we use? And this is where the BRRRR method comes into play. The BRRRR method is not something that people use in the real estate industry on a day-to-day basis. And what I mean by that is that they don't talk about it. If you go ask any real estate investor, oh, what strategy do you use when you're looking into a real estate deal? You're never gonna see someone, oh, I use the BRRRR method and I use the, I just rehab and I fix and flip, right? So they're never gonna say they use the BRRRR method, but everybody kind of does essentially similar types of deals if they're a real estate investor, not just a wholesaler or a flip. So essentially, you're gonna buy the property, and hopefully it's a property that does need a little bit of work, a little TLC, and maybe the rents are a little low for that area. You're gonna put in money into the property, right? You're gonna fix up the kitchens, you're gonna rehab the place, you're gonna paint the walls, maybe put in some new moldings, fix that front door that's been cracked for 20 years, right? You're gonna put money into the property, you're gonna make it look nice, make it look new. This is where you could rent it out for a higher income, right? And we can see how important it is up here that our net operating income increases, right? It really does make a big difference in our cash flow and cash on cash return. So if we can collect even more money every single month from higher rents because we fixed up the place and we made it all nice and new kitchens and all that good stuff, then we're gonna be making a lot more money on the cash flow. On top of that, the value of the property is going to be significantly more now because now we just put in an extra $50,000 worth of work. So if we have a property, for example, that's $500,000, right? We put in, let's say $50,000 worth of work. So now our total all in is $550,000. Let's say that property after a year or two, with the increase in rent and just the actual due diligence and physical looks of the building, someone's willing to pay $750,000 for the building, or maybe $700,000. This is gonna give us an extra $200,000 in equity with just spending $50,000 on new equipment, new kitchens, and rehabbing the place, right? That's where a lot of money is made because now you have built-in equity. So this is the time where you go to the bank and you say, hey, I want to refinance my property. I'm ready to pull out my equity and put it into a new deal. So you can go to the bank, refinance it. You pull out the 200 grand tax-free, do a 1031 exchange. You can pull out all your equity and put it into a new deal. Or you can just refinance it, get this cash and buy another piece of property. So now you have two. So it's kind of up to you. You can leverage your options with the bank and see what they're willing to do with you and what they want to work on. Maybe what deals are in your area too, if you need to do a 1031, because you might be on a time constriction. So it's very important to just make sure you do your due diligence, but that's a great way to build a lot of equity and money to scale your portfolio, right? And then you just repeat the process. That's the BRRRR method. So again, like the best case scenario is that you do rehab and add value to the property to give you that instant equity. This will allow you to potentially ask for higher rent and receive more money back from the refinance. But at the end of the day, the rehab is not entirely necessary. Like for example, I'm personally looking at a property right now where it's new construction and I want to buy it, right? But the issue is that it's new construction, so there's nothing to rehab. They already put in new kitchens, new flooring, new walls. Everything is brand new. 2025 at the time of this video, they've just finished building it a couple months ago. So that doesn't mean that I'm gonna shy away from the property. The financials of the property still look very strong, so I'm still going to be interested in it. I just know that I won't really have any of that access to the instant equity that we were talking about, right? So it's not a big bummer, you know, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, a good deal is still going to be a good deal. So I'm not going to shy away from it, and it's not entirely necessary. It's just an extra bonus. And everything is negotiable. So make sure you shop around with multiple banks and lenders to try to get the best deal, right? You don't want to just stick with one guy. If you just have a TD bank account, don't just go to TD. Go ahead and shop around to a bunch of different banks, because at the end of the day, they're going to have different offers that they want to give you, and you can get the best deal that you can, right? You know what's best for your property. So if one bank's going to offer you 6.5%, just because they're the bank that you like, don't give them 6.5% if this other bank, Bank B, is going to give you 5.5% or maybe 5.75%, right? You can save thousands of dollars just by negotiating and talking to other banks and other lenders to minimize your expenses. And if you are aggressively scaling, consider offloading tasks to third-party teams or your own employees. I highly recommend your own employees, especially when you start to get into the tens, 20s, or hundreds of units, right? So year one, first 2 or 3 properties, it's gonna be solely you, right? You're gonna be the only person that's managing the leases, calling the tenants, setting up appointments with the inspector, the exterminator, all that stuff. That's 100% on you. Once you start to scale, you're gonna start to realize that you don't have enough hours in the day to do all this work, right? So you might have to start allocating some of this work to maybe an employee or a third-party company. And I try to stay away from third-party companies, especially for management, because they're not going to take care of the building that you are going to take care of the building, right? They're going to put it on the back burner. You're going to have vacancies. They're going to be sitting for months. You're going to be losing out on a ton of money. Make sure you just try to do it yourself, especially in the beginning. You don't need to hire an outside management company. But then by year 9 or plus, you might have a whole team together, right? And at this point, you might have a manager that only focuses on maintenance, and then maybe someone else that only works on administrative work with leases, right? So now you put a whole team together, and now you'll start to see that you're actually turning gears. You're building a cash flowing machine that can focus and do its own thing while you focus on scaling. And you could actually retire at some point like that too, right? Like if you want to completely let your hands go and let your business run on its own, as long as you have the system set up in place to run on its own, and everybody knows what they're doing, payroll's being automated, you know, tenants leasing is being automated, then you can simply relax and maybe either spend more time scaling, like I said before, or just kind of retire and enjoy your cash flowing properties. You're building generational wealth here. So even after you're long gone, 6 feet in the ground, your kids and grandkids will be benefiting from your work today. So that's the big difference between any other investment and real estate investment. This is long term. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you have any questions, feel free to follow and DM me on Instagram at steve.vecchio. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Make sure you guys have a good weekend, and I'll see you later. Peace.